Good morning, everybody. My name is Richard Chitister. I'm the lead instructor for driver training at the AAA National Office. Our headquarters are down here in the great state of Florida, where it's, I think, a little bit warmer. For those of you who don't know me, I have been a driver's ed instructor for 27 years now. I've been with AAA nearly 20 years. I started my career with private driving schools, got together with AAA when I lived in Baltimore, and then eventually came down here to our national headquarters. And very few things are more rewarding than watching that student have that aha, that moment when you know you got to them. And that's really a lot of what my presentations are going to be kind of geared towards, getting to that aha moment. I manage several AAA programs, including our approved driving school network on a national basis. I've done training and conferences like this literally all over the country. And again, I do miss not being there in person. As you know, this is something typically we do hands-on in front of a live audience. And so we do lose a few things within using the electronic format, but if we've learned anything over the past year, is we have to adapt and overcome these challenges if we want to continue to, do our jobs. Before we go too much further, and as I'm kind of going through the opening here, if you guys could, in a separate window, we're going to use it a little bit later, open up Menti, go to www.menti.com. It'll be a separate window. It'll ask for a passcode. Don't worry, you will get the passcode when you need it. There will be a time in there. And this is just a little tool I like to use. Kind of breaks the monotony of just using a chat function or just using a Q&A. And you'll see me switch screens. And later in the week, I'll show you how to build one of these, how the system works if you're not already familiar with it. It's really a nice little tool to use when presenting, either virtually like we're doing today or in the classroom. That's one thing we will be talking about a little bit later also in the week, is using those electronics in the classroom. We've got some really cool ideas above and beyond what you may already be doing, and we'd certainly love to hear about those as we move forward. My topic for today, as you know, is vehicle technology. And this should dovetail nicely, or will dovetail nicely, with the ANSTI presentation that Ned just delivered. We will be monitoring our chat, and in some cases, using it for the interaction. Towards the end of the program, we'll leave a little bit of time for some Q&A as well. So your students will be driving vehicles with technology that didn't even exist when many of us started teaching driver education. I know when I started driver's ed back in the early 90s, which I'm kind of, interesting to admit, this is when the first mass-produced hybrids went on sale. So the Prius, the Insight, this was just the beginning of it all. And, we're looking at, decades ago now. Almost. It's really incredible what's been happening with technology. Back in the 90s, some of you may remember the built-in navigation when it started coming. And my colleague Ned actually reminded me last week about having to update these systems by inserting a new CD to be updated, so it just loaded into the system. It wasn't the way we have it today. And that's something we take for granted. I know I pick up my phone, my GPS, I plug in where I want to go. Well, back then, you actually had to load that information via CD into your car. Again, technology is definitely advancing. Some of you may remember, and this one, I was a mechanic for years, the automatic seat belt. So every time you close the door, the little seatbelt would go chick, 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 and close up around you. This was great unless you were a mechanic working on a car. I think I still have bumps back here in the back of my head from that thing hitting me in the back of the head. Some of you may have had these in your cars, and I will bet some of you still have bumps from those things. And, well, we can't forget the CD player. It was the greatest audio innovation of its time to put a CD player in the car. Now, today, kids use Bluetooth. They hook it to their phones. They play Pandora. I do the same thing on my motorcycle. I just don't, CDs are, going away. It's considered old technology. And you guys, this isn't news to you guys. And let us not forget about ABS. Think about all the time we spent teaching that over the years. I mean, huge, vast amounts of time, both classroom and in the car. And you may have seen in your curriculum the 3-year study, the Munich taxi cab experiment with ABS. And I thought this was really cool to bring up, because as you're discussing this with your students, you can certainly bring this up to drive that point home that, hey, technology doesn't work all the time. It doesn't work the same way in all conditions, just like you heard in the ANSTI presentation when we watched the Andy Pilgrim videos. I'm very familiar with all of this, so it's great that these tie together. But the quick and dirty, and I could go through the whole report, but let's face it, nobody wants to hear me go through that entire report. I get it, I understand. So the quick and dirty is they put a group of taxi cab drivers in vehicles with ABS, another group without ABS. Overall, the drivers of taxis equipped with ABS increased their risky driving behavior in every aspect measured. Speeding, following too closely, lane changing, everything they measured, it increased because, well, they had ABS, and ABS will save them every time. We know that to be different. Their crash rates were also slightly higher than those of the non-ABS drivers. Again, relating back to taking more chances. Now, why on earth did I tell you that? Well, so I can tell you this. There are advantages and some disadvantages to vehicle technology, and the need to educate folks on the realities of what that technology can do, and quite possibly, and more importantly, what are the limitations of those technologies. The need to do this has never been greater. And this is where you guys come in. This is where we come in as the educators. It's to help that next generation build a plan to deal with vehicle technology. And we'll touch on that a little bit later. If you've gone through the curriculum, you're familiar with some of this. I wanted to bring out some of those highlights. I hear a lot, and you heard earlier, and this really just, we didn't build these presentations together, just so you know, but I hear a lot of, well, I don't let my students use rear cameras when backing. And using your chat, I'll ask the question, why? What are some things you've heard as to why to not let your students, why people aren't letting their students use the rear view cameras? You can go ahead and put it in your chat. You won't get chastised, it's okay. Sure, limited visibility, Allison, thank you. Anyone else? That's it. I know there's more of you. Not all cars have them. Not all cars will have it. You got to learn to back without it. Eric, yeah, I agree. I don't disagree with any of this so far. Anyone else want to chime in? If they can use their own vision, they can use a camera. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. If you all remember the movie Dodgeball, I love it. Anyone else? All right, we'll move on here. Limited side, very good. And folks, I don't disagree with this, but here's the thing. If they have the technology, if you have the technology, it is our job, it is our responsibility to teach them to use it properly. It's an enhancement to use when backing. Another tool, if you will, in the toolbox to decrease risk. It's not a replacement for proper backing procedures. We know this. Here's a little different angle to take. We taught our students how to use ABS correctly, correct? I mean, think of the time we've spent teaching this and how to use it, how to stomp, stay, and steer, everything that goes along with ABS. And why did we do this? Because of those safety benefits. So how is this different than teaching someone how to use a camera correctly? We'll touch on this a little bit more. Just some food for thought. Now, things are very, very different today with technology from adaptive cruise control to wireless data linking. The need for us to stay current on what these technologies are is never been more important. Even if you might not have the tech in your vehicle, your students will at some point in time in the very near future probably have it in theirs. And again, I go back, our job is to help educate them. And to do that, we have to make sure we are educated as well. Now, I don't know every single thing there is to know about technology. If you've been through the curriculum, you know there's over 90 technologies in there, all of which cannot be covered in a standard classroom. We understand that, we get it. We're giving you more information than you can use, and you guys get to pick and choose a little bit of what you want to present based on what the state requires. And you know, sometimes you might just be in a mood to fire something off to a student because you're trying to pique their interest. We're definitely giving you everything you need to do that. Now, we do know there isn't enough time, especially today, to go through all the technologies, but there are some newer technologies that are becoming more common in vehicles. We will spend a little bit of time today focusing on those, but not entirely. I've thrown a couple little things in here that I want you guys to do. And we'll discuss a couple other aspects of vehicle technology as we get down later in the presentation. More importantly, we will look at what some of these technologies can do, what they can't do. And I'm going to give you some ideas to ponder in ways to teach your students on how to use this technology. Now, for this next piece, I had asked you to download or go to menti.com. So if you've already gone to menti.com, if you could go ahead and pull up that window browser, and you're going to be asked to put in a code. Now what I'm going to do is just really change screens. The code will appear on the new screen as well, so don't worry. So you should be able to see my screen now, if I did it correctly. And name 3 vehicle technologies in your driver education vehicle. So go to menti.com, input the code at the top, 3103168. If you can't use Menti, please just go ahead and use your chat function. Sure, we got backup cameras, lane departure, EAB. Oh, here we go, auto demos, cruise control. You have these in your driver vehicles. This is great. Keep going, guys. We've got cameras. Excellent. Bluetooth. Blind spot detection. Oh, that one's a fun one. Cruise control, adaptive cruise control, auto dimmers. This is fantastic, guys. Keep going, fill it in. You can go a couple of times. Wow, look at them all. You guys have some great vehicles, I'll tell you that. My vehicles don't have a lot of this stuff. Of course, I drive a 1986 motorcycle, so. Lane warning, button start, blind spot, backup. ABS, newer technology, but that's okay. We'll take it. Heated seats. Yeah, we don't need a lot of that here in Florida, but my wife does have them and she does use them. Gets a little chilly, you know. Temperature, outside temperature. Wow, you guys are great. Look at them all. Fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and hop back over to here. And just, it's a great exercise. I can still see you guys bringing stuff in, even though I switch screens. Fantastic information. I love the interaction. This is a great tool if you've never used it. I will show you later in the week how to set one of these up. I'm cheap, so this one's free for a couple if you want to use it for a couple of things. And again, we'll be showing you how to use it. Fantastic. You guys are great. All right, we are going to stop this. All right, you can stop adding now. That's good. Very good. All right, well, since we're talking about rear view cameras, and there seems to be a great deal of space between who wants to use them, who doesn't want to use them, and why they don't. But this is a perfect place, I think, to bring it up, seeing as it is a very hot topic. It is very common. In fact, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates that there are 210 fatalities and about 15,000 injuries annually due to back over crashes. The hard part, and not that any is good, but 31% of those fatalities are children under the age of 5. Now, my kids are all grown. I know if they're not laying out behind the car, but so many kids here, you see it all the time. The car provides shade. The kids will play right under the rear bumper of the car, and cameras won't pick you up there. So again, they're not foolproof. We'll talk about some of these limitations. These sad statistics led NHTSA to pass legislation requiring all new passenger vehicles and light trucks to be equipped with backup cameras by 2016, with full compliance by 2018. So if you think your students don't have it, they will if they purchase a newer vehicle over 2018. So again, our job here is to go ahead and teach them how to use it and how to use it properly. What they can do, remember I said we're going to do what they can do, what they can't do, and how to use it for some training. What they can do is a rear view camera can increase visibility of the rear blind zone by an average of 46%. That's massive in what we do. This ranged from 36% improvement in smaller vehicles or smaller sedans to 75% in hatchbacks. It's just, that's a massive difference if you think about it. What they can't do though, because I always like to, sometimes it's better to know what it won't do. These systems can dramatically improve rear visibility. They do not show 100% of the space behind the vehicle. I've had a situation where I was doing some range training with some adult licensed drivers. And we had about 6 cars moving around the driving range. It was a great setting, and I happened to look up the hill and I had seen one of my students trying to back her car. And she was always about 12 to 18 inches off from where she was supposed to be. So I hollered across the range and asked her if she was using her camera. She was. I asked her to stop, do it the way I taught you, and she would get it in every time. I said, great. I went back to doing what I was doing, looked up the range again about 10 minutes later, and there she was trying to use that camera again to do the same thing, just over about that 12 to 18 inches. She realized then that the camera does have limitations. So teaching solutions. Now, AAA recommends that drivers always walk behind their vehicles to visually confirm there are no obstacles. Now, I am sure as driver educators, You are doing this with your in-car students every single time, every single lesson. This is not an option. That walk-around check is imperative to building good driving behaviors. I have an 18-year-old son who's a senior in high school. I watch him leave for school every morning. He actually does the walk around, not because I'm standing there, but because he knows what can be behind tires. You just don't know. So during that inspection, as Andy had mentioned in his video, remember that the rain, the snow, the slush that can cloud camera lenses, delivering blurry images or rendering them completely useless is possible. So as you're doing your walk around, take your thumb and have your student take their thumb. Not you do it, have your student do it. And just wipe that camera lens if you happen to have one. It will help, again, build that good behavior. Excuse me. Now, that's one way to, okay, you go through, you have walked around with your student, you see it's clear, your student gets in the vehicle, they get all set up, they're ready to go, they start to back up, they put the car in reverse, have that student check that camera one more time. Okay, have them check that camera. This way they can confirm that no little kids hopefully walk behind the vehicle while you were getting in the vehicle and getting set up. Now me, most of you don't know me, but I'm a little more devious. I've gone so far as to hold little stuffed animals like this in my pocket. And we'll do the walk around and I'll kind of do a final walk around and I'll toss one of these stuffed animals or something right in the camera's path. So I know it can be seen. My goal is when the student starts to back out, did they check the camera to see? It's just a little gimmick, but you will know if that student had the aha moment. That moment when it clicks, it says, oh yeah, they got it. They actually listened to what I said. And that's a feel good for all of us, because sometimes we don't know when they leave. But when they're in that car and they, put it in reverse and you see them check that rear view camera and see, the lizard staring at you, that is something they will never forget. Every time they get in the car, they'll use it as an extra, not as a replacement for the walk around, but as that final visual risk reducing check. That's what we're after here. Next on the list is tire pressure monitoring. Now, tire pressure monitoring systems were mandated, let's see, I believe it was back in 2008 production vehicles. There are a couple different types of tire pressure monitoring systems. Again, they're not all equal. So there's an indirect and a direct system. The lower cost indirect tire pressure monitoring doesn't actually monitor air pressure. Rather, the indirect TPMS or tire pressure monitoring systems use the anti-lock braking system's wheel speed sensor to detect if one tire is rotating faster than its others. An underinflated tire, the circumference will be different, so therefore it triggers that there's something wrong with tire pressure. With the direct TPMS, this measures the tire's actual pressure. There's usually a sensor in the wheel. And we're seeing more and more manufacturers move to this type of tire pressure monitoring. Now I have a 01 Buick Park Avenue. It's my son's dad car, he calls it. And it has tire pressure monitoring, but it doesn't tell you what tire. It just tells you that a tire is low. So it calls for going out and actually checking the vehicles. So that's what TPMS can do. What it can't do, and this one This one's concerning. I'm a tire guy, so I'm very, very conscious about my tires. TPS can't make people check their tire pressure. In fact, a study by Schrader International, a company that manufactures these sensors, they found that 42% of the drivers are unable to even identify what the warning light looks like on the cluster. Now here we have on the screen, you can see the left and right, and you can switch it to front and rear to get your tire pressures. Other systems will show all 4 tires, and if one's low, it'll alert you to what specific tire it is. But 42% couldn't identify the warning light on the instrument cluster. Again, this is where we come in. This is what we're supposed to do. Roughly the same percentage of those polled admitted to rarely checking the tire pressure. For those who do recognize the light, 21% said they'd stop to check the low tire pressure. You know, they'd only give it a visual inspection, just kind of look at it, say, yeah, looks good. We call them tire kickers, and rather than using that tire pressure gauge. And worse yet, 10% said, it'll be okay. They look fine. We'll just ignore it altogether and keep going. This is a problem. This is where education comes in. Again, going back to ABS, well, I'm not going to buy a car with ABS because X, Y, and Z. Well, once the safety factors started coming out, people started using ABS. We had to start training people to use ABS. This is no different. This is the same thing. It is a tool in the toolbox, folks. That is it. It's not a replacement for checking your tires. I, for one, check my tires weekly. The recommendation is about monthly. Again, I'm very finicky about tire pressure, so I will do it weekly. In terms of teaching solutions, there are a couple ways you can go here. And again, it all depends on, you know, where you want to be in the involvement side, and do you want the aha moment? The easy one is having your students check tire pressure before the lesson as part of your pre-trip inspection. Now, I won't do this with the same student every single time, but if I have a student for 6 hours and we're doing 3 2-hour lessons, at least one of those, they will know how to check the tire pressure. And then we'll use the tire pressure monitoring systems to see if there's any issues. Now, second, and you know, maybe a little bit more devious, if you want to really kind of drive that aha, that point home, is take a little bit of air out of one of your tires and see, you know, because visually the student won't be able to see the difference, but they'll see that warning light on their dash. Now, I understand this is going to require you having to put some air pressure back in the tires to build it up. But I guarantee you that student will remember to check every single time. It just becomes habit. And after you have that aha moment, like, oh, wow, you know, look, tire's low, okay. And you go out and you know, do what you have to do to pump up the air. Some cars also have a spare tire that is connected to the tire pressure monitoring systems. Not all, but some. And you can also let the air out of one of those and it'll trigger the system. Now, again, some systems will tell you what tire, some won't. So again, they're not all the same. But does the student see the warning light? Okay, that's what we're trying to get across here. Are they recognizing what this technology is and what that technology is used for? And when it happens to them, again, we have the aha moment, if you will. All right, let's up the ante a little bit here with pedestrian detection. And again, I'm trying to build a little bit off the ANSTI presentation here. My hope is that you've seen most of this material in the curriculum. I do have a quick video we can play, provided technology would like to cooperate with me, so let's take a look. So we've all seen those commercials where the pedestrian, usually a child, comes running out into the street just as the driver looks away from the road at someone in the car or a cell phone, and then the vehicle stops short of hitting the child. If you've read the data in the instructor guide, you know what those numbers are. And as a quick refresher, we'll just go over some of them. Even at just 20 miles an hour, the vehicle's avoided a collision about 4 out of 10 times. Now that's only a 40%. The last time I checked, 40% was not a passing grade anywhere. I could be wrong, but I do remember some of my schooling. When encountering a child darting out from between two cars at just 20 miles an hour, a collision occurred 9 out of 10 times. That is brutal. When the vehicle speed was increased from 20 to 30, the systems were ineffective in all scenarios. So again, people have this technology. Oh, the technology will save me. Well, it didn't save little Billy there. He didn't quite make it. I think his name is Sven, actually, the crash dummy there. The tested systems were basically completely ineffective at nighttime driving. So this really takes the technology will save me theory, pretty much toss it out the window here. But that's not the perception of the drivers. Again, this is where you play a critical role in educating your students. Now, obviously, we can't have every student run this exercise on a closed driving range. And why would we? We're trying to teach them to use this technology, but there are other ways, and I heard it mentioned in the ANSTI presentation. I believe Ned mentioned the search, evaluate, execute. Well, this is what the cars are doing. So for a teaching solution, you can have your students drive through a neighborhood, slow speed. And instead of having the car identify, do some commentary driving with that student and have them identify where that child could potentially run out, or where that pedestrian could potentially run out into traffic. And it's incredible the feedback you'll get from your students. They'll call out things that you might not have seen or you might not have called out. Kind of like their own pedestrian detection, if you will. Now, like Andy mentioned in his video, and like the ANSTI presentation alluded to, is, technology is improving every day, every year. Something new, bigger, better, badder is coming out. But it's not there yet. And again, our job is to educate our students, their parents, that you can't rely on this technology. It's simply a tool. But again, technology is getting better. This will get better. But right now, we have to warn them. Another one is parking assist. First, parking assist is not all the same. With a chat, really quick, how many of you have parking assist? I don't recall seeing parking assist in the chat earlier. So if you can go ahead and if you have parking assist, just say yes, 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 that's fine. We have a no, a no, a no. Ooh, several no's, okay. Interesting. So let's take it a different level. How many of you know how to use parking assist? You can give me a yes or no just in your chat. Go ahead. Ah, okay, good. Honesty is the best policy. We've got some no's, a couple yeses. All right, it's really not difficult. Okay, I'll ask one more question and then I'll stop because this is, I can keep going here. How many of you have what you believe is an easy way to parallel park? Give me a yes or no. That's what I figured. We all have one. Absolutely. I am no different. I've taught both my children how to parallel park and thousands of driver's ed students throughout my career. And I have my way of doing it. It's not the way to do it. It is a way. It is a way I find very effective. I have trained other trainers to use it. They like it. They might modify a couple things, and that's fine. What we're giving you guys is tools. My advice is if you happen to go somewhere, and I know it's loaded, but when people start traveling more, people start renting cars, this technology is in those cars. Go rent one, drive it around for a little while, have some fun with it. And find out what the technology is, how it really reacts. For the parking assist systems, there are two types. There's automatic, full auto and semi-automatic. For the semi-automatic, the driver remains responsible for the accelerating, braking, and gear positioning. So the driver has to do all that still. They're not taken out of the equation. A fully automated parking assist system takes charge of all those necessary operations, including measuring a spot to see if it's big enough. Typically, all the driver has to do is pull up next to the spot, the vehicle will measure it, you press a button, the vehicle will move and turn and back into a space all by itself. It's actually pretty cool. To me, it's a little freaky because I know how to do it. And I'm not saying don't train your students how to do this because it's a skill set. Parking assistants may give them a little bit of help if they need it, if they use it. Again, I'll teach you how to parallel park where you don't need parking assistance. Now, what they can do very quick, again, the can, the can't, the how do we teach? The automated system can park a vehicle basically using about 47% fewer maneuvers. It's actually pretty good. That means the human driver had to make about twice as many steering to space adjustments. And I know all you're going to want to scream out, but my kids, my students don't have to do that. I get it. I understand. I have the same thing. But this is what the data says. Drivers using the automated parking systems experienced over 80% fewer curb strikes than drivers who parked manually. And some systems were able to park in those very tight spaces that most people wouldn't even try. We have a large truck here that we drive along with the Buick Park Avenue, and to watch my little 4'11" wife parallel park the thing is kind of funny because she does an awesome job at it, and people, when she gets out, people look at her like, whoa, all right. But so it can be done without the need for assistance, but it's there. So as long as they can do it without the assistance, there's no harm in showing them how that assistance does work if you do have the technology. If you don't have the technology, very simple, you can't do it. Tell Audra you want brand new vehicles. Sorry, Audra, I know you'll hate me later for that one. What they can't do, again, going through our list here. Some vehicles park too close to the curb. The left wheels, and this left the wheels vulnerable to scratches and very expensive repairs. And again, our truck is one of these vehicles. It has 20-inch aluminum wheels on it. And if you scrape a curb, it's expensive to get that repaired, if not replaced. Some systems, again, on the what they can't do, also were so complicated to use that it took longer to use the system than it should have or would have to actually parallel park the car all by themselves. So with all that being said, this is another one of those rear camera situations, and I'll refer back to that. I, like the rest of you, again, have that way to teach parallel parking. So teach them that way, unassisted by technology. I'm not saying don't, because we know the technology doesn't always work and it may not always be there. So yes, we have to still teach them, and I advocate highly for it. If you do have the technology, though, then show them how it works. As long as they can do the maneuver unassisted by the technology, there is absolutely no harm in showing them how the assisted technology works. It's not to rely on it. It is simply an enhancement to what you're already doing. As a side note, with most technologies, how they operate can vary greatly from model to model, even in the same brand of vehicle. So you may have two Chevys with two different body packages that same year, that may have different technology in them. So if you're jumping from one vehicle to another, say if you got two brand new vehicles, again, possibly different body styles with different technology, they're not all going to work the same. So we have to let our students know that just because it says it has this and that and the other thing, doesn't mean that's the same technology that's in the same year vehicle you may have, if that made any sense at all. It does vary by body style, is the bottom line. All right, this one is near and dear to my heart. We saw Andy mention these earlier. I believe Ned may have mentioned them in the ANSTI presentation. The blind spot warnings. Now, I'm a biker, and that's why this one really touches home with my wife and I. Regardless of how you position your side mirrors, we know it's always more difficult to detect vehicles off the rear corners of the vehicle. So we use our enhanced mirror settings. We kick those mirrors out left and right so we can see a little bit further, a little bit wider view. We have the rear view mirror adjusted properly. And we have those students do that quick final check to make sure nobody's there. We're not saying don't do that. Okay. These blind spot warning detectors, some work, some don't work as well. Others, they have some issues with some different speeds. So what they can do is certainly pick up using radar and or cameras. Some use both when another vehicle is driving in that traditional blind spot. What they can't do is replace that need to do that proper visual search. And I will never say, oh, rely on these 100%. I just can't get the words out of my mouth. As a biker, as a traffic safety specialist, subject matter expert, this is not something I would ever tell my students to do is, oh, you don't have to worry about it because the technology will take care of it. The system doesn't always work as advertised. Again, these systems are there in case, I like to call it in case someone messes up. In other words, you didn't do the proper searching, so you did not pick this person up when you did your visual checks. AAA's automotive engineering team conducted a test of these systems It conducted its testing at the California Motor Speedway, so a nice closed course. The two clips I'm going to show you here, you may have seen in the curriculum already. I just want to bring it out because there's a couple teaching tips that we can pull out of this. I just pulled a couple clips. In this case, the motorcycle ones. Again, I said this was near and dear to my heart, and this is why. So in this first test, we have a motorcycle passing a passenger sedan. The motorcycle is traveling at 70 miles an hour, and the passenger sedan is traveling at 55. So let's take a look. Here you see the bike approaching. As it comes up along the side of the vehicle, the light goes off in the mirror and the motorcycle pass. Great. Everything worked exactly as it was supposed to. I'm happy. I'm driving down the highway. I know my systems are working. I'm still doing my visual searching, but I know it's there just in case. And this is where things start to go awry. In the second one, the motorcycle speed increased 5 miles an hour to 75 miles an hour. But the test vehicle decreased its speed by a lot, just down to 25 miles an hour. Let's have a look at this one. If you look here, the system never even picked the motorcycle up. Now, as a biker, that's very frightening. Now, that being said, I typically go under 70 miles an hour. I typically don't drive on the expressway, so I try not to put myself in these situations. But if you have drivers and students, parents that are no longer doing their head checks, that are no longer doing their proper searching, and they're relying on this type of technology to pick up things in their blind spot every time, all the time, somebody will get killed. There's no doubt about that. So how on earth can we teach this? So if you have this technology in the car, and I can see my other screen, so some of you do have this from the Menti exercise that we did. I see it in there, so that's very good. Take that student out, if you have it in your car, on a multi-lane road. Have the student in either the right lane or the center lane. Now, I have no doubt that as you in the driver's ed vehicle, you will be passed by other vehicles. It's just nature. I can't remember the last time I was in a driver's ed car and didn't get passed by somebody. And that's fine. It makes for a perfect teachable moment like this. Have that student recognize when and if someone comes up in their blind spot as they're driving. The funny thing is when I've done this with students, something common I hear is, well, but I saw him coming in my mirrors before the warning went off. And that because of the way we were taught to adjust mirrors. And I'm like, perfect. We did our job. We taught them how to use the mirrors correctly. All right. And in which case, the technology really isn't needed. But again, it is a tool, not a tool to be relied upon, but simply just another tool in the tackle box, if you will. All right, it is Menti time again, guys. Let me go in before you start going into your Menti. I've got to change something here. All right, we have a new Menti I'd like you guys to do, and that is going to be to name 3 vehicle technologies in your personal vehicle. So we talked about the ones that were in your driver's ed cars. Well, using that, which ones are in your personal vehicle? We've got backup camera, good. This one, I know there's more than one of you. I probably should have kept told you. There we go. ABS, speed alert. Oh, I like that one. That one's fun. Proximity sensors, good. Backup cameras, rear cameras. This is perfect. Adaptive cruise control. There's those heated seats again. Must be a thing up there in Utah. What else we've got? Oh, the side alert ones. Good. I don't see too many of those. Lane departure warning, radar cruise control. These are all in your personal vehicles. Nice. Very nice. Oh, I love this little tool. Yes, it gets a little harder to see them, but they'll stay up there for a while. Oh, you guys are awesome. This is great. Again, if you can't use Scott, thank you for ABS, traction control, backup cameras. If you can't get into Menti, you can certainly put it in your chat function. That's fine. Got 81 people. Very cool. Oh, you guys are great. I do so love working with professional people. So looking at all the things that I can still see you guys are still adding, they're still coming in. I wanted to get back to our primary screen here, but so much technology that, I mean, think about it when I'll say some of us are kids because I can't see you and I don't know how old a lot of you are, but I'm old enough to know better and still young enough to poke the stick anyways. But you guys have all this technology in your vehicles, great things to use. The nice thing about having this in your own personal vehicles is when you bring it into the classroom, you have that working knowledge of it. Even if you can't have it in your driver's ed cars, you can at least talk intelligently about what it can, what it can't do with your students. And sometimes that personal connection that, hey, I have this in my car. This is what as I have experienced is so important to the student. So they realize that, oh, this is real. He's not just reading off a book, which is really what we don't want. We'll get into teaching tips on Wednesday. So here's another one. I think I switched that back. Yep, here's another one we're seeing more and more of in vehicles, and this is lane keeping assist. Lane keeping assist is very interesting. My first experience was in a car that I rented, and I actually drove from Florida to Tennessee with it because, well, I'd rather drive that than fly that any day of the week. And I couldn't take the motorcycle, so we'll get into that later too, maybe. But with lane keeping assist, I'm like, all right, well, I've got this technology. Let's have a little fun with it. Big open expressway. Anyone who's ever gone through Atlanta, Georgia knows it's about 10 lanes of highway. And in some cases, there weren't really many cars. So I sat in the vehicle, we're driving down the expressway, and the car just kind of drifted one way or the other. The system kicked in, alerted me, and then moved me over. And I thought that was, well, just a little weird. So of course I tried it again because, you know, weird's my thing. So I did it a couple of times. And I'm like, ooh, all right, let's play with this a little bit more. I found that this has happened on more than one vehicle, there's a biosensor in the steering wheel. So if you take your hands off the steering wheel, the car knows. After a while, it's going to say, hey, put your hands back on the steering wheel, or it's going to start doing funky things to you. Certain technologies don't work anymore. It's actually pretty interesting that they make sure, the manufacturers are making sure that those sensors, you know, are being triggered. We've seen all kinds of, and this, you know, goes into further development of ADAS technology in terms of fully autonomous vehicles that's where all of this is going to eventually build to. But this is the technology we're working with now. So what this system can do is use as cameras to monitor the lane markings. It's kind of interesting. If you don't have lane markings, that might pose a small problem. It can provide either a audible signal or a haptic feedback. You might feel a little wiggle in your seat or in your steering wheel if the system starts to activate. If you still don't do anything, it's going to end up using brake pressure and or steering to help move your vehicle back into its lane. And I'll tell you, it's a very weird feeling to have the car center itself when you didn't do anything. It was very weird. And I'm telling you this because your students are going to experience this, and you don't want them to freak out when it does happen and have them jerk the steering wheel and you end up getting into a crash. What the system can't do, however, is it doesn't work in all conditions or environments. You saw the Andy Pilgrim with the ice, the dirt, the snow. When these sensors get covered, they don't work, or their effectiveness is extremely diminished. It's amazing. Right now, and then I say like literally right now, I'm waiting for the report to come out in the next week or so, is what happens to these sensors when they actually get dirty. What percentage does the decrease happen when these sensors are dirty? The AAA got together with their research team. They actually had to grind up bug guts. They shot them through a high pressure thing at the sensors to get them all over the front of the car. And if you've ever driven in Florida, we have love bug season down here, and it will just coat the front of your car. Everyone has their type of season with those bugs. If you don't wash it off the car, there's going to be a degradation in that sensor usage. So AAA, again, working, is putting together a research-based study on what happens and what percentage. I do not have the data yet. We were hoping to have it for this show because it will be the newest thing that's out in terms of actual research done. We know when they're dirty, they don't work, but to what percentage is really where they're going. And so just here's a quick little video clip on lane keeping assist.
Lane departure warning systems track a vehicle's position within a lane, usually with a camera mounted on or near the rearview mirror. If the system determines a vehicle has or will inadvertently stray out of the lane, it alerts the driver. Most systems consider the movement unintentional if the driver doesn't use the turn signal. Alerts vary and may include a sound, a vibrating seat or steering wheel, and a visual warning. Lane departure prevention systems help direct a vehicle back into the lane through light steering or braking.
So here you actually saw two different systems. You saw the first one was a warning, and the other one was a mitigation. So one will just let you know, hey, you're doing it wrong. The other is going to say, hey, you're doing it wrong. I'm going to fix it for you this time, but it may not work all the time. Again, one of those things that we can teach our students to be aware of when we're out there doing training. I found an expressway works really well for this. Get them out there, have them drift, have them feel it. Again, this is fantastic. The goal is, if they feel it happen, it may trigger something in their head that says, oh, okay, I'm doing it wrong. I need to pay more attention. And it may have prevented a crash from happening. So again, the systems aren't horrible, they are a backup. Something happened that caused you to drift left or right, or go into another lane, left or right, whatever it may be. It could be drowsiness, obviously alcohol, and these are all things for, topics for another day all in itself. However, this is the technology that's in the cars. Again, teach them how to use it, show them what it's for, and a lot of them, it's there in case you mess up. So if we teach them not to mess up, we've all done our jobs. But we know the reality of this. We know what the statistics show. Not only will they mess up, they will mess up at a very early age. So could this technology help prevent a crash? Absolutely. Has it? Absolutely. Does it work all the time? Nope. Pretty much like the rest of them. So you need to drive that point home to your students that this is just a tool. It is not the end all. It is not the, hey, I can look down on my phone because, if I go over the lane, the technology will put me back in my lane while I'm answering my text. That's not what this technology is for. And that's not how it is to be used. We know this. I'm preaching to the choir here, but geez, the importance of getting this through to people is imperative. When you look at the Teslas, self-driving mode, people have been killed in these things. If you haven't heard, look it up. Tesla crashes, Tesla fatalities. It does happen because people are using the technology in ways that it is not designed to be used. Very clearly stated, like Ned alluded to earlier, in the most underread piece of literature, which sits in the glove box of the car. And it tells you that, this is not a fully automated thing. But, and sometimes the technology doesn't work to recognize certain things, to tell the car to slow down. Again, that driver must be available and assist. Okay, it's an assist to the driver, but the driver ultimately is driving the vehicle. Now, I couldn't resist this one, and I had to put it in because, well, frankly, I wasn't a believer at first. Now, this is in the curriculum. It's kind of buried in there. You may have had to trim it out. But you may come across that student that says, hey, did you know paint can fix itself? If you're old like me, look at him and say, well, have you ever seen the movie Christine? Because if they haven't, tell them to go watch it and say, oh, not only can it fix itself, it possesses a car. So this is, that's all I could think of when I saw this. I'm like, oh, this is, the beginning of a Christine movie. But with this self-repairing paint, this type of paint can repair light scratches on its own with no body work action performed by anybody. Most vehicles use a clear, hard coat of paint as that top layer of paint. The self-healing paint uses a softer, clear top coat. The research I did, it actually used enzymes, I believe, from shrimp, lobster, and stuff, and the enzyme is actually within this polymer, and the molecules rearrange themselves to smooth out light scratches. So when they're sitting idle, you have the scratch, they're solid. As the sun beats down on them, as it rains, this polymer actually fills in these little scratches and cracks. Again, I wasn't a believer. I was watching videos. I'm like, nah, someone's just, got a gimmick out there. Nope, Nissan has actually painted some vehicles with this in their production cars. It is very cool, very neat. It's just something different that you can, with your students, you can say, hey, did you know? Because believe me, your students know a lot. My 18-year-old, he'll go online, tell you anything about a car that you want to know. right or wrong, but he'll tell you anything you want to know about a car. We've had those discussions as well. And this is just one of those things. Again, no real, how to teach this, but that student could be like, oh, wow, this guy is on point. He's got some cool stuff. Or this gal is on point. She's got some really cool stuff. Another discussion that comes up quite a bit, and honestly, I was surprised when I saw the data, is electric vehicles. And I don't drive an electric vehicle. I have. But one of the big things is, well, how far can you go on an electric vehicle? And it's not a specific set number. They give you hey, you can go from, this many miles to this many miles before you need to recharge. But what wasn't released was, what are the limitations on some of this charging rate in electric vehicles? One of the biggest things found was temperature fluctuation. So AAA used the Auto Club of Southern California Research Center to test 3 vehicles in cold, moderate, and hot temperatures. Vehicles were tested for city driving to mimic stop-and-go traffic and to better compare with the Environmental Protection Agency's ratings. All of the vehicles evaluated demonstrated reduced range in both hot and cold climates. Why do we need to know this? Well, some of your students are going to be looking at these. And if you look at the chart up here, at 75 degrees, they were getting about the 100 miles. But boy, when that temperature jumped up to 95 degrees, just 20 degrees higher, which is, well, what it was this weekend here, that charge rate dropped significantly down to 69 miles. And then in 20 degrees in the extreme cold, and I know it's not extreme, I get it. I do know what extreme cold is, but in that 20-degree range, boy, just down to 43 miles. So that really has a large impact on the total mileage you can get out of a battery charge. Manufacturers are working on making this better. They're making bigger, better batteries. I probably couldn't say that again. As that technology improves, so will the range of these vehicles, and then we are aware of that. So this isn't an absolute. This is something that will change. You'll have students pop up on their phones and say, well, this one gets X amount of miles. And the question you need to ask is, well, what were the conditions that they were in? And the student probably can't tell you. They may be able to, but they might not. And again, we're looking at, for this specific slide, just how weather affects that charge rate. And here it's fairly significant, half the mileage in 20-degree weather. And yeah, that's significant in my eyes. All right, as Ned spoke to earlier in the ANSTI presentation, AAA automotive researchers found that over the course of 4,000 miles of real-world driving, vehicles equipped with active driving assistance systems experience some type of issue every 8 miles. So something went wrong every 8 miles with these systems. That's an issue. That's proof in the pudding that while they're not perfect, they do provide some support, some risk-reducing support to the driver, but they're not perfect. 73% of those performance issues were related to the lane centering. AAA also found that the ADAS systems that combine vehicle acceleration with braking and steering often disengaged with very little notice. So imagine if you're a driver that's gotten very comfortable with your driver assist systems, and you're just cruising down the road, and all of a sudden everything just decides, nah, it's not going to work. All the advanced systems aren't going to work. You have to go back to manual control at a blink of an eye when you weren't ready for it. Now, granted, you should be ready for it, but we know in cases like this, people aren't because they're getting very comfortable with their systems. This is what we need to warn against. Again, not that it's bad, but it has its limitations. On public roadways, nearly 73% of the errors involve instances of lane departure or erratic lane position. AAA's 2020 automated vehicle survey found that only 1 in 10 drivers, 12% of the people surveyed, would trust riding in one of these self-driving vehicles. So I can't express the need for not only your students, but for you as driver education professionals, as training professionals, to build a plan now. It is essential that not only your students are aware of what this technology is and what it can and can't do, but you obviously have to be aware of what this technology can and can't do, which means you have to do your homework. It means you have to stay current. Now, with the curriculum, to my knowledge, there's not a more current curriculum out there in terms of listing the technologies and what they do than the AAA curriculum. It is the newest one on the market. So what you need is there. I recommend going above and beyond, and I didn't want to put up the same screen that Ned did, so the resources are basically the same resources that I would use for getting more information about technologies. So you can pull all those resources right off that ANSTI presentation. But like I mentioned, you have to develop a plan. And then you have to help your students develop a plan. And if you didn't make it that far in the curriculum review yet, I'm going to go over it really quick. I'm one of those, if you're going to teach it, it's best to do it first. So if I'm going to teach someone how to use lane keeping assist, I'm going to go out and play with it first and find out what it can and can't do. And then I know where I may need to intervene with my student should something go amok. Again, very, very important. So if you're going to teach it, do it first. So I'm asking you all to develop your plan along with helping your students develop theirs. So let's talk about that plan. So with that technology, what's its purpose? Okay, you need to know what that technology that you have in your vehicles. Now, granted, they could have a couple. So they're going to have their personal vehicle at home that mom and dad drive. And they're going to have the driver ed vehicle. And there's more than likely going to be 2 different types of technology in there. So they need to know both. And obviously resources have been provided for that. Limitations. I think we've pretty much hammered that home. You guys are probably sick and tired of hearing us talk about it, but what won't that technology do? Not that it won't in the future, but right now, these are the limitations. My favorite, allow that time for safe on-road testing. So if you get a new driver ed car, you better know what every single bell and whistle is in it, because if your student asks, you have to know, you have to have an answer for them. Now, that answer could be that, hey, let me get back to you. And that's a perfectly acceptable answer. But for the most part, you should be able to look at your dashboard. You should be able to look at everything else and be able to pick it off for your students. So when your student says, hey, what does that little doohickey mean? You need to be able to tell them what it is right off the bat. And if you don't know, quick, using your chat, where can you find out what that technology icon might be? Using your chat really, really fast. What is a great resource? Online, okay, Aaron, very good. Who else? Come on, somebody better say it. Y'all are killing me here. Ah, Allison, thank you. John, thank you. Big capitals, John, very good. Oh, I do love working with professionals. You guys are a blast. I wish we could be there. The glove box, Aaron, very good. You know, again, you've got to have some fun at what you do. I believe in doing that. So this is why I try and do this interaction and pick your brains a little bit, because we can have fun at what we do and still teach. Okay, and still teach. Aaron, you're funny. And last but not least, and oh, I just don't know how to drive this home. Never rely on the technology. Drive as if you don't have it. This is the messaging that we have to give the students. It's okay to use it, but in terms of relying on these systems to prevent crashes, we know that it's just not all inclusive. Research shows that, you know, the drivers can be tempted to change their behaviors based on those systems installed. And this is a recognized theory that has come down. The concern is that drivers will operate their vehicles in a less safe manner. Again, we saw that with the taxi cab experiment as well. So these things do happen, folks. Our job as educators is to train them, train the students, train the parents. Some of this stuff you can bring up with the parents, and I have no issues with that. You know, ask the parents, what do you have for technology? Surprisingly, they might not be able to tell you, or they may have misconceptions about what that technology is. And if you do a parent night, it's a great thing to kind of bring up, just to pick their brains, almost to say, hey, you might not know as much as you think. You know, there's always something to be learned. And I take this away from every session I do across the country in terms of any training. I will never sit here and tell you I know everything, because you guys will tear me apart. I know better. I've been doing this long enough to know better. But I always take something away. There were some comments that I'll be using in future presentations. Some of you had made some comments earlier that I really liked, so I've got a couple jotted down here that I'll probably incorporate into my presentations because I learned something. I'm like, ooh, I like that, or that was a nice comment, something good to use. And I'll give credit to the crew as I move forward, and if I do use it. Again, don't rely on this tech. Drive as if you don't have it in the vehicles. Make sure your students understand this same exact concept. With that, we have actually, wow, we're running a little early. I shouldn't have taken out the last slide. We can open this up to, if anyone has any questions, you can use the Q&A or the chat. A vehicle's onboard operating system. Oh yeah, Mercedes has that, Ned, yep. Any questions that you guys want to pose in the chat or the Q&A? There's 170-80 out there, I can see it. Someone's got to have a question. Or you're all getting tired of listening to Rich talk. But that's okay. All right, Audra, we are running about 10 minutes early. I have some other videos and stuff I can show, but you know, this does conclude the presentation. Again, my name is Richard Chitister. I'm the lead instructor for driver training. You can reach me at my email below. You'll see at rchitister@national.aaa.com. I am available for questions and answers. And as you go through the curriculum, if you have any questions, just ping me. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that I can. If not, I'll send them over to Ned, because, Ned has all the answers for everything too. I'd like to thank both Brett, Ned. The ANSTI presentation really lends itself to what we just did here, diving a little bit deeper. And I know as the ANSTI presentation, that whole thing progresses, there's going to be more teaching tips built into that on how to teach your students to use this technology. Folks, people don't know how to teach it. Okay, we're figuring it out as we go along, and there's just nothing else we can do but figure it out. So that's why we're here. We'll rely on you as well. If you've got some ideas that, hey, have you thought about, teaching backup cameras this way? Or have you thought about doing, lane deviation this way? If I didn't say it, I probably haven't thought of it. So we'll take that information, we'll use that information and just build more for the masses. As new instructors come on board, as the ANSTI presentation gets in its final stages, the more information we can have to give our instructors so that they can go out and deliver this to the end user, to that student, to that parent, it's just going to make the roads a safer place to be. So with that, Ned, any comments or?
Well, I didn't realize at the time that I commented that my remark having to do with the vehicle's operating system went only to the panelists, not to everybody. So could you elaborate, could you amplify on that? When you had asked where we can go to
Sure.
find information.
Sure. So some vehicles, in this case, Ned put up the Mercedes, it's actually programmed in the vehicle. So I believe some you can download to your phone. Others, you can just view the instructor manual right on the screen on the vehicle. It's really a cool piece of tech that they're putting in with even further connectivity technology. They'll actually be able to update that book on the fly as a simple update. You may never know you got an update, or it may alert you that you got an update to say, hey, you might want to check out this new information on X.
Exactly.
So that's a great way for manufacturers to stay current. We all know once that thing's printed, once that book is printed, there's no change in it. Technology allows us to change things on the fly. So that's a positive.
And then, Rich, speaking of things having to do with gadgetry and technology, not necessarily related to vehicle technology, but I am very interested and eager for your Friday presentation, because I think you're going to give us some tips and hints and hacks as far as using instructional technology, right?
Correct. And that's not how to use Zoom. That'll be a little later in the day. I will be focusing primarily on using technology within the classroom, in the face-to-face. So we have some great information on that, some tips, tricks, and toys to play with. If you haven't used Menti, you guys saw it today. Hopefully you liked it. I thought it was just a very cool visual when people start piling everything in. I'll show you how to set one of those up. You guys are probably all familiar with Kahoot, so we'll kind of hit that and move on, but I've got a couple other cool things that I believe you guys will enjoy and be able to implement into your training with very low effort on your part. I know how busy everybody is.
Rich,
so on that note,
Rich,
I would go ahead.
Rich, you have another question. How much of the tech should be taught in the classroom versus the car?
So the technology section for the classroom is designed to run, I want to say, about 90 minutes. So you probably can't hit it all. I would certainly hit all the technology that you have, that you can, within your driver's ed vehicles. And then do something very simple like I did here with Menti, You can play this in the classroom. You can put it up on the screen. The students can watch it. They're anonymous. They can just put in whatever, you know, and just have fun with it. You can pull from that list and possibly add in some of those technologies into your training. It allows a little bit of flexibility that way.
And Audra, I saw that you had fielded a question and responded privately to an attendee who was asking for your guidance and input reference to obtaining driver training vehicles that are equipped with these different ADAS gadgets. Do you care to speak to the crowd about that? What your response was and what guidance and insight you have on that?
A couple things before I answer that. Also, to add on to Rich's last comment, these are good homework assignments too. These are things that parents can do with the students at home. So if you guys want to make parent student assignments for them to get to know their own personal vehicles, you know, everything from changing the tire and checking fluids up to learning the vehicle technology and actually going through the manuals and taking the student out and teaching them the technology in their own cars. Those are good homework assignments.
We have
And
a fun
then,
little workbook assignment for that.
correct. And the workbooks that the workbooks that you guys have from AAA have those assignments in there. And a lot of it is meant to be used with the parents. And someone had a question about whether they could use driver's ed money or if they had enough money to buy vehicle technology driver's ed cars. You guys do have the money to buy whatever type of car you want. Your school district is just used to buying school district vehicles that have no features in them. They buy the stripped down model. So if you want a different type of vehicle, you need to communicate with your business manager about what type of car that they are purchasing for driver's ed. And they do have the funds for that. And if there's any questions, I speak with your business managers all the time, and they've all been to several trainings with me, so they understand their money now. So if you have some kind of request, you need to find out who your business manager is and just speak to them about those requests. They just probably assume that you don't want all of those mechanisms in the cars when you're teaching the kids.
And Audra, they don't, correct me if I'm wrong, they wouldn't necessarily have to have all the technologies, but, you know, say there were certain technologies that are more common than others as add-ons to the vehicle. They can suggest specific ones also, probably, correct?
They can. They have the funds, and they have discretions of what type of vehicles that they have and what type of features they have. There's nothing that limits them from purchasing them.
They could buy a Corvette. I'm going to get you in so much trouble. I'm sorry, Audra.
Within reason.
All right, guys. Well, that I think wraps us up. Any other comments? All right. Well, I would like to thank each and every one of you. It has been an honor and a privilege to be able to present to you all. Again, this is something I wish we could do in person. That's how we typically do this. This is the next best thing. One day, hopefully soon, we will be face to face. We'll get to meet each other, sit down, you know, have some soda and just sit and chat. I would love to pick everybody's brain in person. Until then, I would like again to say thank you on behalf of AAA and myself. Drive safe, and we'll see you on the road.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody should have AAA materials at their schools. And so if you are unaware of how to download your materials or use your materials or your student features, your lesson plans, within your lesson plans, there's videos and there's student activities inside of them. If you're unsure how to do any of that, make sure you reach out to me. Everybody should have everything that they need as far as materials from AAA. And we will be doing another training for the new instructors who just received the material. So look forward to that.